Okay, so you know how it is every year, right? March Madness is just around the corner, and I feel like even if you aren't like a die-hard basketball fan,
Right.
even if you're just filling out a bracket, at the office or with some friends, like everyone's talking about it.
Mm.
It's hard to ignore
Oh, yeah, for sure.
all the buzz. And you've probably heard this debate every year too, right? Like, can some celebrity who just like feels it in their gut,
Mm-hmm.
can they actually do better than the experts who, crunch the numbers and, really study all year?
That's a good question.
And that's kind of what we're going to dig into today. So we've got some really interesting material actually that looks at this very thing, this
Yeah, right.
celebrity intuition versus the data, in terms of March Madness and making those all important, bracket predictions.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a deep dive into these two approaches.
It really is, like you said, it's an interesting question because it really gets to the heart of how we try to understand unpredictable things.
Mm-hmm.
You see it not just in sports, but in all sorts of, fields where people are trying to predict what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
And this idea that we've been looking at kind of takes that curiosity that we all have, and it puts it front and center with like a really engaging concept for exploring this whole March Madness bracketology thing.
Exactly. Yeah, because the source material we have here is suggesting like a YouTube podcast,
Yeah.
called Celebrities versus Experts. Who really knows March Madness? Bracket Showdown.
I love it.
Right. And the whole thing is built around this idea of, this annual bracket battle.
Yay.
But the twist is, seeing these well-known personalities go up against, these seasoned analysts.
Yeah.
And the visual that they're suggesting is pretty brilliant, I think. So picture this. You're scrolling through YouTube and you see this thumbnail, and it's split down the middle, right? Half of it is like a recognizable face, like Drake or Kevin Hart, maybe with like a playful expression. And then the other half of the thumbnail is a serious sports analyst, someone like Stephen A. Smith or even like a dedicated bracketologist.
Right.
And then right in the middle, in big, bold letters, it says, W wins, or bracket battle. Like when you see that,
Eye-catching?
oh yeah, your eyes go straight to that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it taps into that human interest in, seeing different worlds collide.
Right,
So.
right.
And also questioning, what is expertise? What does it even mean?
Yeah.
So you have that visual juxtaposition, and it just instantly sets up the central tension of the show. You're immediately wondering, what kind of like crazy insights or hilarious, misses are going to come out of this.
For sure. And to really grab your attention right from the start, they suggested this really high-energy opening sequence.
Okay.
So think like a montage, right?
Yeah.
Fast-paced cuts of celebrities reacting to these wild sports moments, just pure emotion.
Yeah.
And then you cut to, experts at a whiteboard, like breaking down plays, and then sprinkle in some of those classic March Madness moments, those buzzer beaters and those crazy upsets that we all remember.
Those iconic moments.
Exactly. And then over this whole montage of voices saying, every year, March Madness takes over the world. But who's better at predicting the chaos celebrities with their gut instincts?
Yeah.
Or experts with their stats and spreadsheets? Let's find out.
I mean, that right there, that sets the tone.
Right.
That's a classic hook. You're immediately, setting up that central conflict, and you're promising an entertaining, like, exploration of these two sides.
For sure.
And by weaving in those, iconic March Madness moments, it also creates this instant connection with, anyone who's ever watched the tournament, whether you're a bracket expert or you just casually fill one out.
Right. It gets you in the mood.
Yeah.
And so then, the question becomes, who would actually be in a show like this?
Yeah, who are the players?
So they suggest, having a charismatic host, obviously someone to kind of keep things moving and, mediate between these two perspectives. And then for the celebrity side, you could imagine someone like Kevin Hart. He's known for his like passionate and often really funny sports takes.
Yeah.
Or Snoop Dogg, longtime Lakers fan with his own unique, commentary style.
Of course.
Or even Justin Bieber. I mean, he's been spotted at NBA games.
Yeah, he's a big basketball fan.
And these are all people who clearly, are interested in sports and aren't afraid to show it.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that each of those names you mentioned brings a different kind of sports fandom to the table, right?
Right.
You would expect their bracket picks to be driven by personal preferences, team loyalties, maybe just a feeling about a particular team or player rather than, hardcore statistical analysis.
Yeah, gut feeling.
Exactly. And for you, the listener, this represents one way of approaching these predictions, right?
Right.
The intuitive, the maybe more emotional route.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on the other side, for the expert, they suggest names like Joe Lunardi.
Ah, the legend.
This guy is like synonymous with NCAA tournament bracketology.
Right.
Or Jay Bilas, a well-respected ESPN analyst who really knows college basketball.
Yeah, he's great.
And these are individuals who spend, countless hours studying team performance and strength of schedule and all these underlying metrics.
Yeah, they're all about the data.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you have these two perspectives clashing, it becomes really interesting. So, how would this actually play out in the podcast?
Yeah, how do we structure this?
Well, the suggestion is to have a structured approach.
Okay.
So you start with introductions, obviously setting up this central, celebrity versus expert challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And then the celebrity would walk through their bracket and explain their reasoning, which is probably going to be pretty unconventional.
Oh, I bet.
Can you imagine Kevin Hart trying to justify picking a 16 seed to win it all?
I would love to see that.
That's the kind of entertaining content we're talking about.
Totally. And for you listening, the key takeaway here is to recognize what's probably driving these celebrity picks. It's often, personal bias, maybe like a team's colors or a particular player has a cool story, or it's simply a gut feeling.
Yeah, just a hunch.
Yeah. And this highlights how, our emotions and these superficial factors can really influence, how we make predictions.
Oh, absolutely. And then that would lead right into the experts bracket breakdown.
Okay.
And they would explain their picks based on, all that data and analysis we talked about.
Right.
So you get this clear contrast, one bracket built on intuition and personal preference, the other, on hardcore statistics.
Yeah, the data versus the gut.
Exactly. And when Joe Lunardi talks about why a 12 seed often upsets a 5 seed, he's not just, making stuff up.
He's got the receipts.
He's drawing on years of historical data showing that these matchups tend to be more volatile, due to factors like conference strength and late season momentum.
And what's fascinating for you, the listener, is to see that rationale, behind the experts' choices. It's not just about picking the higher seed. It's about understanding this underlying metrics that might indicate, an overseeded team or an underseeded team.
Yeah.
For example, an expert might point out a team with really strong advanced stats, but they didn't win their conference tournament. So on paper, they might look like a lower seed, but they could be a real threat.
A sleeping giant.
Exactly.
And then we get to what I think sounds like the most entertaining part, the head-to-head matchups.
Okay, the face-off.
So the host would compare the celebrities' picks and the experts' picks for, some of the key games and really highlight where they disagree.
Oh, were they totally class?
Right, like maybe a potential Cinderella team. You can just picture it, right? The playful banter.
Yeah.
The celebrity teasing the expert for being too reliant on numbers,
You stuck in the spreadsheets.
Right, and then the expert trying to, patiently explain this statistical probabilities.
And for you listening, this is where it gets real. You see that direct contrast between the approaches in the context of specific games.
Yeah.
So it makes those abstract ideas of intuition and analysis more concrete and allows you to think about, which approach do I actually find more convincing?
And to make it even more fun, they suggest incorporating a lot of fan interaction.
Okay, get the audience involved.
So, having polls and encouraging comments, asking viewers, who do you think has the better bracket? Or even have people share their own crazy predictions.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's a great way to build a community around the show and make it even more engaging for you watching.
Yeah, that audience participation is so crucial these days. It turns a passive viewing experience into an active one.
Right.
And for you, it's a chance to see how your predictions and your reasoning, stack up against both the celebrities and the experts.
Exactly. And of course, you have to have that ongoing narrative, throughout the tournament.
Yeah, keep people coming back.
So you're tracking the performance of both brackets.
Right.
And then maybe in a follow-up episode, you reveal who actually had the better predictions.
Or even tease the results, to keep them on the edge of their seats.
Exactly. Keep them coming back for more.
And that's smart, right? That's sustained engagement. It creates a storyline that unfolds over time, and it mirrors the excitement of the tournament itself.
For sure. For sure. And, to kind of zoom in on these contrasting approaches a bit more, the source materials specifically mentioned some examples that I thought were really interesting.
Yeah.
So on the celebrity side, they ask questions like, why did Kevin Hart pick a 16 seed to win it all?
That's a bold prediction.
Right.
Yeah.
Or Drake's obsession with Kentucky smart or sentimental. Like, these questions immediately make you curious.
For sure, you want to know what's going on in their heads.
Right. You want to know the reasoning. Is it hilarious? Is there some logic to it?
Right, right.
And for you, these examples highlight the role of emotion and loyalty
Yeah.
and, maybe even just pure randomness.
Sometimes you just got to go with your gut.
Exactly. And Drake's, constant support for Kentucky, regardless of, how good they are in a given year, really shows you how personal attachment can influence these choices.
It's more than just the stats sometimes.
Yeah. Overrides the data sometimes.
Yeah.
And on the expert side, they dig into things like why the 12-5 matchup is always a bracket buster.
That's a classic.
Referencing that trend of, 12 seeds upsetting 5 seeds, or the analytics behind picking a Cinderella team. Like, how do you use data to find those teams?
Yeah. Can you really predict those upsets?
And this is where you get into the more technical side of, bracket predictions.
Yeah, where the numbers come in.
Like that 12-5 upset trend, it often happens because the 12 seed is a really strong team from a smaller conference that might be underseeded.
Okay.
While the 5 seed might be from a big conference but have some weaknesses that, a hot 12 seed can exploit.
So they're ripe for the picking.
Exactly. And for you, understanding these insights gives you a deeper appreciation for college basketball and all the factors that go into these upsets.
It's not just luck,
It's not all random. There are often reasons why certain teams are more likely to pull off a surprise.
Right. Analysts might look at things like a team's three-point shooting percentage versus their opponent's three-point defense.
Oh, interesting.
Or their performance in close games, clutch factor.
Yeah, can they handle the pressure?
Exactly. So there's a lot that goes into it.
And then, of course, this all sets up some really fun debates.
Oh, I bet.
The source suggested questions like, can you really trust a bracket based on mascots?
That's hilarious.
Versus, is it better to go with your heart or the numbers?
The age-old question.
Right. And these are the kinds of questions that I think you probably ask yourself when you're filling out your bracket.
Yeah, for sure. It's lighthearted, but it also gets at something fundamental.
Right.
It makes you think, about how much weight you give to your gut feeling versus, the hard data.
Exactly. And the mascot question, that's the extreme example of a non-analytical pick.
Yeah. Pure vibes.
But that heart versus numbers debate that gets to the core of, how do we make predictions in uncertain situations?
That's the real dilemma.
It is. And for you listening, it's a reminder that there's a whole spectrum of approaches to this.
Yeah, from pure fun to, really serious analysis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to really make a show like this work, you need those moments that go viral.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, the shareable clips.
Exactly. So they suggested creating, short clips of the funniest or most surprising moments.
Yes.
Like a celebrity making a crazy prediction that actually comes true.
Or totally backfires.
Right. Or an expert, giving a really serious explanation of statistics in response to a completely ridiculous pick.
The juxtaposition is gold.
And those clips are perfect for social media because they capture the essence of the show, that clash of personalities and prediction style.
Right, and it makes you want to see more.
And they also talked about adding in, maybe a friendly bet between the celebrity and the expert.
Okay, up the stakes a little.
Right, like imagine the loser has to wear the winning team's jersey on social media.
I love it.
That's just fun. And, it's a way to generate more engagement for you following along.
Yeah, it adds a personal element to the competition and it gives you something to look forward to.
Right, and they even mentioned the idea of having quick cameos from other celebrities,
Oh, yeah, bring in more star power.
just sharing their brackets or, rooting for their teams.
Why not?
It's great for cross-promotion, and it adds even more excitement.
And by tapping into the fan bases of these other celebrities, the podcast can reach a much wider audience.
Exactly, and for you, it's just more entertainment, right?
Right. You get to see how even more people approach their brackets.
And then, of course, getting the word out is important. They talked about using social media teasers, partnering with sports influencers, and encouraging you, the viewer, to comment with your own picks using, trending hashtags like hashtag March Madness,
Hashtag bracket battle.
hashtag celebs vs experts, all that good stuff.
That's how you get people talking.
Right, because a good social media strategy is so important these days.
Oh, absolutely. You got to be where the people are.
Exactly, and to keep the momentum going throughout the whole tournament, they suggest doing those follow-up episodes.
Keep the story going.
Track the progress of the celebrity and expert brackets, maybe even feature some fan brackets, and then do a post-tournament recap.
See who came out on top.
Right, who won the bragging rights.
It's like a whole narrative arc that spans the entire tournament.
Exactly.
And for you, it gives you a reason to keep coming back every week.
They even gave a little snippet of what the dialogue might sound like.
Oh, I like this part.
So picture this. The host asks, all right, Kevin, you've got Duke going all the way. But Joe, you've got them losing in the Sweet 16. What's the deal?
Okay, setting up the conflict.
And then Kevin Hart jumps in with, man, Duke's got the swagger. Coach K's guys always show up when it matters. You can't measure Hart with numbers, Joe.
He's bringing the passion.
And then Joe Lunardi, the expert, calmly replies, while their history is impressive, Kevin, this year their defense is ranked 47th in the nation. Historically, teams with defensive rankings outside the top 20 rarely win the championship.
Boom, bringing the stats.
And then the host turns to you, the viewer, and says, so who are you trusting? The swagger and the heart, or the stats and the history? Let us know in the comments.
I mean, you can just feel the energy.
Right, that back and
It's a perfect illustration of the dynamic they're going for.
Exactly. You see the emotional reasoning versus the analytical reasoning.
And it pulls you right in.
And makes you think.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what really stands out is this fundamental difference in how celebrities and experts approach these predictions.
Yeah, two totally different worlds.
You have celebrities relying on gut feelings and personal biases, maybe even a little superstition. And then you have the experts with their data and their models and their deep understanding of, basketball trends.
And it's important to remember that neither approach is perfect, right? March Madness is famous for being unpredictable.
Oh, yeah.
An upset can completely derail even the most carefully crafted bracket.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, a celebrity is a totally random pick might just happen to be right.
You never know.
And that brings us to our final thought for today.
Okay, hit us with it.
So given this, interplay between the randomness of March Madness and the statistical patterns that experts are looking for, is there like a sweet spot, a way to balance your own gut feelings and what you know about basketball with a more data-driven approach?
That's a good question.
It makes you think, right? When do you trust your gut and when do you trust the numbers? And not just in sports, but in other areas of life too,
Absolutely. It's a question that goes way beyond basketball.
Because we're always making predictions, right?
Yeah.
Based on, a mix of intuition and information.
So how do we find that balance? Something to think about.
For sure.
Yeah, food for thought.